Friends, welcome back to the class. It's again a joy for us to have this class, very particularly on historical development of uh, churches. In the last class, we have looked at the course schedule in which we did understand how the course is going to go about. Particularly, we are going to have the 5 units, and all the units are going to give us different perspectives and paradigms in which we may be able to travel uh, the journey of understanding a particular subject on historical development of the church. Today, I'm going to explain about the early church and its development. See, very important for us to identify the factors in which the church was moving about. See, if you are not in a position to identify the several packets in which church did go, we may not able to really reflect upon. And at the end of the day, we may not also clearly come up to say, this is what the church is all about. So we may have a different thoughts of opinions and different dimensions, and that would be a lot of gaps. Therefore, in order to fill this gap and to have a coherence, in order to have a course flow and thought flow, may I help this class to identify some of the areas the church did undergo. In order to do so, may I explain you about the early church and its background and how this church did really grow in the midst of different contexts in which these contexts were trying to entangle the church and trying to put their arms around and see how the church is going about. Therefore, there are some negative elements. There also have some positive elements. This class is going to give you a platform to see how these negative elements and how these positive elements did really make the church to grow. See, we are in the path of progression, and we are trying to move out in a way by which we may able to identify the several factors, and these factors are technically very important for us to retrospect so that we may have better scope of understanding the early church and its development, or the medieval church and its development, or the Reformation church and its development, or the postmodern church and the development. Therefore, to begin with, may I take you to some slides which I prepared for the class, and may I explain you through the slides that I have for the class today. Okay. Therefore, let's move on to the slide sharing. Let's look at some of the important things about the early church and its background. See, history of Christianity, when we talk about the history of Christianity or the early church, it's a story of the followers of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. See, it is a story of how they tried to live, organize, attempt, witness, and suffer and respond to church. So it is all about how did they live, how did they do some important elements that are entangled with them, and how they were witnessing to Jesus Christ. So it is like a story of the followers of Jesus Christ. Okay. So now may I quote you one of the important quotations from early Keynes, who has a greater command in the history of Christianity. He says, history of Christianity is nothing but an interpreted record of the origin, progress, and impact of Christianity upon human society, based upon organized data gathered by scientific method from archaeological documentary or living sources. So it is all about the interpretation of the record, and it is all about the progression of the life. It is all about the impact upon the human society. So you can put it in this way. It is all about the information. It's all about the interpretation. It is all about the impacts upon the Christian society. Okay. So how did they get this? So it's all about the gathered information. How did they gather this information? Through the archaeological evidences. There were living sources. There were some monuments, and there are some archaeological comments, and all those documentaries and all those living sources and all those monuments and all those oral traditions and written traditions, they gather together and to see how this information, how this data would help them to understand Christianity. So the early Kant's quotation is one of the important things. It's all about interpretation. It's all about information. It's also about the impacts of society. Okay. So it is an interpreted, organized story. So the story is not a disorganized story. So we have a consistency right from the beginning of the Christianity, even today. We may able to look at the history and reread the history and understand the history better way simply because of this information. And this information is all about the redemption of man. See, the humanity should be redeemed. And history is not about the datas and names only. So history is all about life. History is all about people. No, it is people centric. When we talk about the history of Christianity, or when we talk about the early church or early Christianity, it's not about just date. It's not about the figure and facts. It's all about something very important for us to identify. It's nothing but it is all about people, people centric. So when we talk about people, it is all about the called out community. Who are called out community? The ecclesia, a community which is being separated, which has been set apart in order to carry out the great commission of Jesus Christ to this world. That is an important thing. Okay. So with this note, may I also take you the second important idea that I have on the particular topic on historical identity of early church and its background. Okay. Now, it is mainly a study of people, which I mentioned earlier. It's about people. It's about people. You know, history is nothing but it's all about the study of the people and the groups of the people in the societies, right? See, it is study about. So, what are you going to study about? It's study about the thoughts, ideas, feelings, language, you know. And the church history is a history of Christianity. And history of Christianity is nothing but the early church, meaning the things that are happening in around the church. It's an early Christian understanding. So it's about feelings, it's about thoughts, it's about language, it's about kind of thinking. All this are being brought together and to see how the church did grow in the midst of all these things. That's an important thing. Okay, let me also have. So how this Christianity was introduced? Well, you said this is what the early churches, well, we did understand. But how the church was seen, how the Christianity was seen. So what was the important factor that are related to this? This is the biggest question that we have. See, the Christianity was introduced in the world in the time of three great cultures. So you should never forget the three great cultures and three great nations. Three great nations. So it's about the Roman nation or Rome government and the Greek culture and Jewish background. So whenever I do, I just make the candidates to identify the three things, a triangular understanding of the early Christianity or early church or the history of early Christians. What is this? This is Jews background and Greek culture and Rome government. These three are called a triangular understanding of Christianity in the early church. So if at all you want to identify Christianity, or if at all you want to have some background about church, background about early church, you should able to identify, okay, this is the Rome government. So you should also need to imbibe into the Rome administrative system so that you may have a clarity of understanding the church. And the second important thing is like Greek culture. See, culture is a part and parcel of every society. You cannot just try to take away the culture out of any society, which is not going to be a possible work. Why? Because it's a part and parcel. And nook and corner, if you go to the society, the people, when they do perform certain things, and if you go and ask them, hey, why did you do this? Oh, this is my culture, the people might say it. This is my cultural practices, the people might say it. So culture is important. And thirdly is about Jewish background. See, religiously, predominantly, they were Jewish. In the time of Jewish predominance, a particular monotheistic religion jumps into that particular ground. That's where we have to identify. A Judaism is a monotheistic religion, and Christianity was a monotheistic religion. So it was being introduced in the time of one predominant monotheistic religion, which played a significant role. And it was introduced to a nation which played a significant role. It was introduced to a language which made a greater impact and created a lot of influence. So keep this in your mind, the back of your mind, very strongly you should keep these three things: Rome, government, Greek culture, and Jewish background. Friends, this is what the early church and its background. And again, may I also explain you how this prepared okay, the fullness of the time. Galatians chapter 4 verse 4 says, in the fullness of the time, that Jesus Christ was born in the womb of Mary under the law. So that Jesus Christ came to fulfill the law, but did not come to destroy the law. He did come to this face of the earth to serve, not to be served. So this is a spiritual dimension of understanding who Christ is and incarnate Christ is. Again, the fullness of time was a preparation laid by the three great nations: Rome, Greek, and Jew. Okay. Now, how this really prepared Christianity? What was the preparational role in terms of the church to exist? See, today we have a lot of denominations. We live in the 21st century and we have a lot more denominations. Sometimes we surprise, oh, these many denominations are there, which are existing right here, the place where I stay. So you may be wondering, why this many denominations? Why this many groups? Probably this is one of the most asked questions when people study about the early church, when people study about the medieval or Reformation or so on. So the preparation, which could be discussed under various conditions and background, and early church and its background. Okay, so we are going to have some important things for us. You see here, Jesus had laid the foundation of the church. He came and fulfilled the law. After his ascension, the apostles went straight to the task. See, Jesus was laying foundation for the church, and he came to fulfill the law, right? He did not come to destroy the law, which I mentioned a little earlier too. After his ascension, he commissioned the disciples, and disciples were able to go and propagate the word of God. You can see the book of Acts chapter 1 verse 8. They were being empowered by the Spirit of the Lord, and they were witness in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, in the uttermost part of the world. The church started to move from Jerusalem to Antioch, from Antioch to the different parts of this world. You read from the conversion of Paul, and Paul was taking this gospel to the different communities. So you can understand the vibrance and the vitality of its propagation. Therefore, the foundation laid by Christ, and the school law, like a law, was a school master, like it was giving an instruction. But this may not able to fulfill what God has decided for. See, Jesus came to die for all. He came to lie down his life for all. That is the greatest fulfillment that we have on the face of this earth. He died for us. And this was the greatest testimony that apostles, the disciples of Jesus Christ, who were witnessing this, and they started to take up this particular message across the world. Okay, that's the biggest thing. Okay, and you can see there was rejection as well as the curiosity of embracing a change. See, change is inevitable. People look forward to have change, and a society looks forward to have change. And people live in the 21st century always wanting to see how they can have changes in their life. So how? right? So there was a rejection as well as a curiosity. So you have to see the polarity when Christianity was trying to come into the forefront, as Judaism was predominant there in the soil. In the time of that, there were a lot of rejections. There were a lot of curiosity. So you, as a student, should be able to identify what made them to be rejecting and what made them to have a curiosity. So these are the two important things that you have to have very clearly. Well, see, the miracles and teachings were too great to be ignored. The miracles of Jesus Christ was not identified by all. They were trying to ignore the teachings and trainings of Jesus Christ were being ignored. So you have to look at this idea. So due to this, lot of heresies had come into existence, which we'll be discussing a little later, not now. Today, for this particular class, I'm just helping the class to identify how this early church needs to be understandable. How we can understand this. This is the important thing. Okay, one more thing. There was a readiness among the one who had seen and heard Jesus. The people who have seen Jesus Christ, the people who have seen the miracles of Jesus Christ, the people who were walking the back of Jesus Christ as he was performing the miracles, as he was traveling from Bethany to Bethsaida and Capernaum and Galilee, all these places, there were a group of people just willing to follow him. And there were a group of people who have seen the miracles in their own lives, and they were living witness, and they were walking with Jesus as wherever Jesus goes, they were trying to travel with him. And when Jesus was being taken up, when he was ascended, and when disciples started to embrace his teaching and to propagate this teaching and to carry out this teaching across the places that they look at, and this group of people were very curious to understand furthermore about Jesus Christ and would like to walk with the disciples to anywhere, and they want to be a martyr for Jesus Christ. So that was the greatest, the preparational parts for these groups who were walking to this particular context. Okay. Now, the one more important thing, what made the Christianity to come into existence? What were the preparational zone? If you could ask me, there's a Roman peace, which I will be explaining about you a little later also. Okay, Roman peace. And second one is called Greek culture. And third is called the Jews religion. We're just waiting for the seeds of the church to be shown. See, they were ready. The Greek culture, the culture was ready to accept it. And the Rome nation government was ready to accept it. And Jewish religion was ready to accept it, ready to say that we are willing to accept it. See, for the Rome government, it was not a problem. Why? I'll be explaining you why. The Greek culture was having no problem to embrace Christianity to a certain extent. And Jewish religion also, to a certain extent, they also did not have any problem. They were looking forward actually to see some more teachings or some more sects to emerge, because Judaism understood Christianity is one of the sects, right? I'll be explaining when I talk about religious context. Okay. Now the general situation. What is the general situation? Okay, it was a fullness of the time. According to the scripture, it was a fullness of time. Galatians chapter 4 and 4. Keep thinking about this particular verse, okay? And the Romans were ruling at its peak, and the Greeks were in their best. Jews sticking to their monotheism and the Messiah. See, you see, Romans were ruling at the peak, and Greeks were in their best. And Jews were sticking to the monotheism, which I explained to you a little earlier also. The Romans were very strong, and Greeks were very strong, and Judaism is very strong. Okay, so the ground was right. The conditions can be discussed separately as follow. May I list it out? And the next class, I will take up all these conditions to explain to you. Just have a glance about these conditions. So the geographical condition was favoring, political condition was favoring, intellectual condition was favoring, religious condition was favoring, cultural condition was favoring, social moral condition was favoring. And there were a lot of negatives and positives, which I mentioned already. There were sometimes rejections, there were sometimes curiosity. Therefore, we are going to look at the connection, the relationship of Christianity or the spread of Christianity with geographical condition, with political condition, with intellectual, religious. That's where we will try to move on. Okay, the friends, with this, I would like to end up this particular session. I'll be back with the new thoughts, very particularly on the geographical and political and intellectual. So the next class you may expect from me teaching from the geographical condition, the political condition. Okay, so have a glance on this particular issue, which I mentioned already in the syllabus about the books that you have to refer to. So you can look at the syllabus, and very particularly you can look at the unit 1. Underneath of that, I also mentioned some books, some articles to be referred with. You can refer to those articles and those pages of the book so that you may have a better understanding about this particular thing. Okay, thank you, friends. Thank you.